Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar about employment. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Brian Hubler.
Thank you, Madeline. So welcome, everybody. I'm excited to talk to you about employment tonight. We're gonna go through the steps of, well, for what, to start with, what is employment? And then what are the steps that it takes to be involved in support of employment. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the field for 23 to 24, somewhere 23, 24 years now, for 13 years at the ARC. Couldn't be happier working with the St. Louis ARC. It's such an amazing place. And the team that I get to work with to support people to really find their dream jobs, it's amazing to get to watch and to be a part of. So supportive employment, our mission of the St. Louis ARC is to empower people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to lead better lives by providing a lifetime of high quality services, family support, and advocacy. Supportive employment is designed really to empower people, really individuals that are seeking full-time work, that are seeking part-time work. We provide initial and ongoing job coaching and retention services. We work with each individual and their supervisors to really just ensure that it's a successful job match from the beginning. The process that we go through is really unique to each individual. It's so individualized compared to when I first started in this field. Today, it's really, again, about the individual and what their interests are and making sure that we're meeting their choices and their interests so that they can be successful in the long run. So where do we start? Everything starts with the individual and their team. When I say the team, that means their family. That could be mom and dad, could be aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, could be family friends, it could be neighbors. We really like to involve the entire team to help that person or the individual we're supporting be as successful as they possibly can. One thing that we do encourage is that each individual gets in contact and opens up a case with DMH, or Department of Mental Health, also known as regional office. You'll hear it called those three different words. We encourage people to get connected with DMH. DMH is a referral source that can be there for the lifetime of, as long as that individual wants to work with them, but they're a great referral source for different programs that are out there that you may not be aware of. We want individuals to be connected with it also because some of our funders require that individuals are connected to the Department of Mental Health. The next step is contacting vocational rehabilitation. Vocational rehabilitation is our state funder that provides funding to our agency to provide these services. It is a must that the individual goes through vocational rehabilitation and gets started with them so that they can start working with us. The key pieces is that if you call me on the side and say, hey, I'd love to work with the ARC, I'm gonna ask you to first call all the employment providers that are out there. I want you to make the decision and pick the agency that you feel meets your needs, and your family's needs the best. It is your choice. And we want you to, again, pick the agency that works best for you. Every agency does work through vocational rehabilitation, but we all have a little twists in how we do things. The ARC, I feel we always have twists in how we individualize our services and make them impactful for each person that we support. For some agencies do provide transportation during the process of employment. Some agencies don't. Some agencies have very high caseloads and some have smaller caseloads. So we really would encourage everybody to call those providers again and find out and make the best choice for themselves. Once you've done that you've started with vocational rehabilitation, you've chosen the provider that you want to work with, you're ready to go. So just for your reference, I've provided the VR offices with their addresses and their phone numbers. The way that this works is it depends on where you live. So if you live in St. Louis County, you would have the options of St. Louis North, St. Louis South, or St. Louis West offices based off of where you live. There's also a downtown office for those folks that live in the city, and then there's a St. Charles office. I also wanted to make sure that I provide the Department of Mental Health regional offices addresses and their phone numbers, and they are also located throughout the St. Louis region so that it's the easiest for you to get to. So as the first thing, we're going to do an intake, and I'm sure that in years and going through services that you've had to go through many intakes. And they can be very repetitive, and we apologize for that, but they are very, very important to us. It's really a time for you to get to meet the provider that you chose, but it's also a time for us to get to know you. We want to make sure that we're able to gather information so that we can provide the best supports to you, to your loved one, as possible. We're going to go over the individual's rights. We want them to know and make sure that they know that they have their rights to choose the type of supports that they want, the type of job that they want. We're going to go over release of information forms. It's important for us to be able to speak with the individual's teams if the individual so desires and gives us permission to do those. We want to be able to talk to the family members to really help figure out what is the best fit going to be. We want to have that information is at our fingertips so that it makes this process quicker and seamless as possible. We're going to want to gather contact information, backup phone numbers in case there's emergencies or anything along those lines. We're going to talk about preferences that's desired by the individual. We want to know job interests. We want to talk about the type of schedule that the individual is willing to work. Can they work during the day? Can they work evenings? Can they work holidays? That's a big question for a lot of people that they've got to be able to answer. Which one that comes with that is next is transportation. If the individual is going to be working evenings and holidays in different times, how are they going to get to work? You'll hear us talk about transportation in employment more probably than anything else. It maybe gets sick of hearing us talk about it, to be honest, because we want to make sure that once we get a job that transportation is set up and that the person can get to and from their job, no different than us, right? So we want to talk through the environment. Are we looking for an indoor? Are we looking for an outdoor type of job? Are there any types of accommodations that might be needed to be successful on the job? We're going to talk through support needs, strengths and abilities, and what's the individual's desired wages. Those are all big questions that are very important, and we don't want to miss a single step of that process because we want it to be the perfect match from the beginning. Once we're through the intake process, we go into discovery. Discovery is kind of what it sounds like. Discovery is really about building a relationship with the individual, his or her support system and environment, and taking into consideration the individual's interests, preference, needs, abilities to create a roadmap towards his or her employment goals. Like I mentioned earlier, we want input from the entire team. We want input from the family that have so much knowledge, prior knowledge of different things that they've learned and done at school, any type of volunteer opportunities that they've learned. We want to go through work history. Have they volunteered at school? Have they done any type of work training within school or any volunteer opportunities on the side, outside of school? Have they had a part-time job somewhere possibly? What can we learn from that? We want to find out what types of jobs those were, or volunteer opportunities those were. Did they like them? What did they like about it? Maybe what didn't they like? We want to know about the reasons for working. I think that's very important to always find out every person that we support is what is their reason for working? Is it because they want to make money? Could it possibly be because they're being encouraged by outside sources? When we're supporting somebody, obviously the person has to have the desire and they have to want to work. So that's very important for us to really talk through those things to find out what is their desires so that we can find the best job possible. We want to talk through hobbies, likes, interests, dislikes, and preferences. So I'm going to go back to a story that one of the first people that I supported, and he was telling me that he wanted to be a NASCAR driver. We always talk about jobs that are reasonable, that can be obtained. And when I was working with this individual and he told me he wanted to be a NASCAR driver, I was stumped at first. I couldn't fathom how I was going to help this individual get to that type of job that he was wanting. So in the discovery process, I was meeting with his family and I went to his house. We were talking through his job goal, what he told me he wanted. And his parents said, well, you know what? Look at all the posters on his room. So we went in his room and he had pictures of all the top NASCAR drivers at the time, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and so on. So what we ended up finding out during that discovery process is just this individual had such a passion for racing, for cars, for that type of interest. It wasn't necessarily that he wanted to be a NASCAR driver, but he had interest so much around being around vehicles and racing. That helped us really pinpoint and help find out what he wanted to do. In the short version of the story, we ended up getting him a job at the NASCAR speed track. It's a go-kart speed track. I would have never dreamt that was the job that I was going to get him when he told me that he wanted to be a NASCAR driver. So the discovery process is really huge for us to help really get to know the person so that we can really support them the best way that we can. We want to talk through also support needs in the discovery process. How does the person want to be supported? That's a huge step. That's a huge step in them identifying, do they need hand-over-hand guidance? Do they need verbal prompting? What types of supports are necessary to help them be successful to maintain that job? We're going to again talk through transportation options. Can the person drive themselves to and from work? Are we necessarily needing to get a job that's within walking distance or can ride a bike to? Are we riding it or taking a cab or the bus system? Is mom and dad helping their loved one get to and from work? So those transportation options are huge. And we like to not only have one option, but we like to have 2 or 3 options because we all know that things happen and our first option doesn't always work out every time we've got to get to work. There could be a flat tire or many other reasons. So we always want to talk through transportation to make sure we have multiple options. Once we've went through discovery, we go into exploration. Exploration really we're utilizing all of the information that we've learned from each other and about the individual through the discovery process to really develop specific and realistic opportunities to really allow that individual to define for themselves what does and does not make sense for their employment. We go out and we do employer research. That could be us driving around in a car and looking for help wanted signs. It could be searching the web and looking for job opportunities and job assessment opportunities. What we like to do during the exploration process is we will go out and do 3 to 4 different assessments, where that means the individual will have an opportunity to go into 3 to 4 different businesses for 3 to 4 hours each and try a job out to see if it's something that they really like. And it may have been something that during discovery, we really thought that this was going to be a good job option for them. Once we've done the assessment, the individual might say, you know what, I thought that's something I would like, but man, that wasn't fun at all. I don't want to do it. So we kind of go back to the drawing board and we really kind of talk through those pieces of discovery and those work interests. And we do different assessment exploration opportunities until we really find out what's the best fit for each person. That can take, like I said, that can take typically 3 to 4 assessment opportunities, sometimes more, depending on the person. We also want to talk through benefit plannings. We use the Disability Benefits DB 101. It's a form that we use that helps talk through benefits that based off of how many hours the individual wants to work, if that's part-time versus full-time, what's the expected wages that they're going to make, because we want to be able to show and talk through their benefits planning to make sure that if they're wanting to maintain their SDI benefits, that we're not interrupting those. But also if they're getting a full-time job, how that's going to affect those benefits. So we really want to talk through, we really don't want surprises in the end after the job is acquired. We want to make sure that everybody's comfortable and understands how a job is going to impact those benefits. The work readiness inventory is a tool that we use, and I'm going to pull it up towards the end of our PowerPoint training today. But the work readiness inventory was something that a few of us providers created to really work with special school district and to work with individuals and their families. We wanted a tool that would give us detailed information about students, or it can be used with any individual. Again, as students are going through school, they go through so many assessments, and so the teachers and the families have so much knowledge about their loved ones. We created this work readiness inventory so that families and the individual and the teachers can fill out this form so that they can hand us the information, so that we're not repeating unnecessary assessments and having you go through more the same or similar assessments that you have in the past and wasting time. We want to move forward and be as efficient as we possibly can to really find that dream job. It also was created to help teachers and really speak the same language as us adult providers as we're talking in the employment world. We wanted to be able to speak the same language. The school district language versus an employment world language is completely different when we're talking about acronyms and expectations in the workforce. So this form is very important for that piece as well. Like I said, it can help reduce the need for repeated assessment activities, and it gets us the detailed information that we need so that we can move quickly. The purpose is so that people can share accurate and current information with us, report the level of work readiness, and determine and support of employment needs. Once we've went through the discovery and exploration process, we move into the next phase, which is called job development. Job development is where we're actively going to start looking for a job. We've already learned through the discovery and exploration process what the person's interests are and the type of work that they want to do. So we're going to start with going through on instructions on job seeking. We're going to start really practicing those interviewing techniques, making good eye contact, a firm handshake, being able to talk about past work experiences, how it might relate to potential jobs that the individual is applying to. We're going to build a resume. The resume will be built off of past volunteer experiences, work experiences, and their interests in the type of work that they're moving towards. We definitely want that we get the team involved to help with that process. But once we finalize it, we start working with that resume and really getting out in the field and applying to as many places as we possibly can. With the individual, we are identifying those opportunities. We do at the ARC, we expect the individual to be engaged and involved and to bring 2 to 3 different job opportunities on a weekly basis. At the ARC, we carry very small caseloads, typically on average, around 8 people per caseload of individuals that are looking for work, because I want to ensure that each individual is meeting employers and filling out applications to desired work opportunities every single week. If we're not doing that, the process is slower, and that's not what we're here to do. Finding competitive employment consists with the needs, again, outlined during the D&E phases. That really assures that it's a suitable job match with the individual and the employer. We're going to continue to talk through transportation. Like I said, probably too many times, but it's such a huge piece to really think through before you ever land a job. And we're developing job supports and accommodations. We're really figuring out and working through what those job supports are going to look like, because they can be different depending on the type of job that the individual accepts and moves forward with. And we're educating employers throughout the process as well. We educate them on how to best support their new employee, but also what the ARC is going, how the ARC is going to be involved, that we're there as an advocate and a support system to help their new employee and to help the employer. We're not there to be the sole support. We encourage and push every employer to supervise their new employee just like they would any other employee. We also encourage them to treat them the same way as they would every other employee. When we help individuals get jobs, they have to be able to do the essential functions of the job, which is no different than any other person that's applying or accepting a job. And I think that's very key and very important why we go through the discovery and exploration process in the beginning, to make sure that it's the best suitable match that matches that person's strengths and their interests so that they can be successful in doing the entire job. So once we're going through the development process and we're completing applications, we're going to interviews. We can drive the individual to those interviews. We can sit in interviews if the individual would like us to sit in there so that we can help answer questions if need be. Once that first offer is made and the individual accepts that job, we then start talking about the next phase, which is job supports. Job supports is intensive on-the-job training that is necessary to teach the employee both the job duties and the job-related responsibilities. But what I mentioned in the previous slide is it's also there to work with the employer. One of the key pieces for us is we do not want anybody to be reliant on paid services or the job coach. We want to make sure that we're able to fade out our services so that the individual can do the job independently and that they're not reliant upon a job coach to be successful. Job coaching typically starts at 100% in the beginning, where if the person's working 40 hours a week, we will be there that first week and beyond 40 hours and start to fade out as that individual is learning all of their duties and they're fitting in socially into their environment. They've learned how to clock in and out successfully. They know where all their supplies are. They know how to ask questions about next tasks to take on. Communication is a huge piece that can be one of the hardest supports for us to provide in teaching those social skills and really helping a person fit in socially into their environment. But those are all huge pieces, but our goal is to fade out. We do not want to be there 100%, 75% or 50%. We really want to be there minimally, again, so that the person can be successful, so that they can do their job without us being present at any time. Job supports or the coaching phase can last up to a year, but typically it's about a 2 to 3 month window where we're providing job coaching supports and for the person to be successful. But again, it can take up to a year if an individual needs that in-depth supports to be successful. The final phase of employment is job retention services. So job retention services, or it's a service that's there for the lifetime of that job, or as long as that individual wants and or needs us there to help them, assist them with their job. So if a person stays in their job for 20 plus years and they still want and need our services, we're going to continue providing job retention services ongoing based off of their need. Most people in retention get about 3 to 5 hours of job retention services per month. Some people get more, some people get less. It really just depends on that person. It could depend on the amount of hours that they're working. Someone that's working 40 hours a week versus someone that's working 10 hours is obviously going to get probably more supports on the job, just to help them work through their tasks, through changes in their environment. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, what happens if my loved ones at my loved one's job, their supervisor changes, or they change, their duties are changed? We can always jump in and provide additional supports during the job retention phase. We would increase those, if a job supervisor changed, we would increase those supports to help them learn how to work with their new supervisor, so the supervisor knows how to work with their new employee. And then we would start to fade those out. The same thing if they got a promotion and new job duties, we can increase those supports and fade those out based off of how they're doing and what level of independence they're at on the job. So that is basically retention. It's just those natural ongoing supports. We're there really just to assist and advocate. We want the employer to be their supervisor. We want them to support their employee just like they do everybody else. And again, it's a support for life. The work readiness tool, as I mentioned earlier, it's really just a great tool that us providers like to use, because we want you to come with some of this information already prepared and ready for us. It's not vital. You don't have to complete this form. But again, it was developed really because you guys know your loved one. The teachers can fill this out. They've worked with them for years. They already have a lot of this information at their fingertips, and so do you as parents, to really feed us that information so we're not continuing to do assessment work that they've done in the past. The first one is that we focus on is physical ability and work tolerance. We want to go through what is the estimated amount of time that a student can perform following actions. This one's pretty easy, about how long can they sit, how long can they stand, how long can they walk. That's really important to really talk through some of these things to really know the types of jobs that we're going to be looking for. Almost every job description out there has what's the maximum amount of weight that a student can lift and carry repetitively. It's important to know. It's been on my job description for years. Indicate the student's ability to perform the following physical tasks: reaching, bouncing, climbing, crawling, feeling, kneeling, twisting. We want to know what those physical tasks are and what can they do, because we really don't want to put, again, in a job that's gonna require some of those skills that if the individual is not able to do those. We want to be able to look at if the next one is indicating if the student has the skills in the following areas: finding his or her way around inside, whether that's in the school or at home, reading and understanding maps, maintaining an awareness of his or her own environment. Those things are all huge, helping the person be able to navigate through a different work environment, someplace that's new. We want to know that ahead of time so we can be prepared to provide those additional supports if those are necessary. Number 6 on there is indicating the extent to which the student can safely tolerate the following environments. So we want to look at about different temperature extremes. So if the person does not like, the Midwest 90-degree days outside, we're probably not going to want to look at any type of outside jobs that are going to be on a daily basis. What about loud noises, clustered spaces, any types of allergy triggers, any bright or flashing lights, or is there how do they tolerate that? If the individual struggles with flashing lights and those things, we want to know that, so we're not bringing them into those environments. That's not going to be the best fit or match for them. The next phase is going to be on work preparedness. Indicates the student's ability to manage time and organize his or her daily life. So this is a great one for parents at home. How does the person do with going to bed at a reasonable hour? Do we stay up all night, or do we go to bed early so that we can prepare and be ready for the next day? Do they make time for breakfast? Do they prepare their own lunch? Do they manage their medications? Managing their medications is one huge step for competitive employment in our supportive employment program. Employment providers are not allowed to administer medication to any individual. So that is one huge piece that each individual needs to be able to do independently. I have not met many employers that will want to take on that responsibility either. So that's something that you really want to make sure that you're taking care of and really practicing and working through those, that the person is doing that independently and successfully. We're talking through ensuring that clothing and uniform is clean and ready, recognizing the need to speed up or slow down a work pace to match current job paces of the job. Under work practice number 2 is rating the student's ability to manage personal grooming and hygiene. That is absolutely huge. Number 3, we're looking at the student's transportation situation again. How are they getting to and from work? I think you guys have heard me say that 6 times now. And I told you it's such a huge piece that we really want to help that person figure out those steps so that they can get to and from work every day, whether that's 6 months from now or a year from now. What's our backup plans as we go through this? Let's go down to the next big phase, or the next section. It's transferable work skills. Indicate how the student acquires new work skills. So that's really back to about the person's support needs. How do they learn? A situation that I use a lot in my learning style. An example is if I'm the driver in a car and went from point A to point B, I can probably tell you how I got there exactly. I can tell you the streets I turned on, how many stoplights there were, that there was a McDonald's on this corner. If I'm the passenger, I probably couldn't tell you how I got there. I was probably talking, I was on my phone, I wasn't paying attention. So I'm a very hands-on learner. I like to learn by doing. I don't necessarily need a lot of verbal prompts, or not necessarily a lot of repetition either for myself. But each person that we're working with, we really need to find out how that person learns and what's their preferred learning style, so that we can match our teaching strategies up to their learning styles. Number 2 is indicating how the student maintains acquired work skills. Again, do they do that independently with hand-over-hand guidance, usage of verbal prompts or visual prompts? A lot of people we support use visual prompts. If you're not familiar with visual prompts, I suggest you kind of Google visual prompts to see what different options are out there. There's so many different visual prompting tools that we use. One, for example, is we were supporting a courtesy clerk at a Schnucks. And one of the main responsibilities of a courtesy clerk at any grocery stores, they've got to bag groceries, but also return carts. The individual we're supporting was struggling of putting chicken in with paper products, or putting stuff that shouldn't have went together. So what the coach did is put some visual prompts together and really got permission from the store first, but took pictures of just probably 100 different items, laminated pictures together so that meat products went together, paper products went together, and so on down the list, and put those laminated sheets at the end of the aisle so that the individual could see the different types of things that went together, so that he wasn't putting chicken products with paper products. The store manager of that Schnucks loved those visual prompts so much. He made copies of those and put them on every single lane of those 20 some lanes within this Schnucks store. And he loved it so much, he wanted it as a training tool for all of his employees, not just for that individual, because it wasn't unique to that person. A lot of people were mixing things up in bags that they shouldn't have been. So those little easy tricks and tips like that can help someone to be so successful in learning and maintaining a job in the long run. Briefly describe the person's computer skills. Do they have computer skills? Is that important for the type of job that they're getting into? It may or may not be. For the question earlier about somebody that an individual, their son or daughter likes to play games at home, this is going to be a huge one. Building those computer skills and using that information to help us tailor a job based off of their interest and their skill sets is going to be huge. Interpersonal skills. This one is absolutely huge. Interpersonal skills and really talking through those social skills pieces. Number one is indicate the student's level of ability in the following areas. Are they able to maintain comfortable eye contact with coworkers or peers? So yes or no. Is the student able to maintain comfortable eye contact with supervisors? Is the individual able to interpret range of facial expressions, interpret body language, able to interpret other emotions? Those things are all huge pieces that if we have that prior knowledge, we don't have to learn and relearn all of those things that you already have the knowledge of. I won't read through every line of that, but I want to make sure that I provided it and went through a few of those so you know the types of things that we're looking for, the different skill areas that the person is really, really good at, and areas that they may not be good at. And those are huge, because if someone is poor at math skills, we do not want to get them a job at working at a cash register. If their social skills, if they don't like to talk to people, we don't want to get them a job as a greeter, potentially at a Walmart. So those things are all very important that we're learning those, and the more information that you can share, again, the quicker this process will be and the more successful we'll be in the long run. Some questions that I do get asked from time to time is, how quickly will you get my son or daughter a job? And that's such an impossible question really to answer. I will tell you that we have gotten some individuals a job on day one of job development, and some people have been looking for a job that up to a year. It really just depends on the individual's strengths, their weaknesses, and their interests, and the expectations of the type of job. One individual that we're supporting recently wanted to work at one specific Lowe's outdoor and gardens department. It had to be within a 3-mile radius of their home. Well, there was only one Lowe's that was that close to their house. So, and they only wanted a job in that one department. So we had to wait for that job opportunity. We built the relationships with that employer and those supervisors. It took us close to a year for a job opportunity to open up for that individual to accept and to move into that role. So it really just depends on that individual scope. How far can they work away from home? Again, that transportation, how are they going to get there? And the types of work. if their scope is very limited, it's going to take longer. The larger their scope, the larger their interests are, the quicker we will help your loved ones land a job. So that's my spiel on employment.
Another question for you.
Yes.
Is there a maximum time that they have to find the job?
There is no maximum time. We are going to support each individual, again, on an individualized basis for as long as it takes to help them be successful. As long as they're engaged, interested, and want to find a job, there is no timeline that it takes.
How do you support an individual with appropriate relationships with coworkers? And then the second part was about if it, becomes a persistent problem, would you make referrals? What do job coaches do to help people navigate healthy relationships at work?
Yeah, healthy relationships, like I said earlier, those social skills pieces are some of the most challenging supports for us to provide, because it really just depends on what is the engagement and how engaged does the person really want to be. And we don't want the coach to push on what their vision of social engagement is as well. So we've really got to find out, what does that person want? I was supporting one individual one time that he really was fine just eating lunch by himself every day. He didn't need all of that social interaction. And I was trying to help him build relationships, but he's like, in the end, he told me, he's like, nope, I want to eat by myself. So that's the first step, is really finding out, what does the person want? If they do want to engage in conversations and have that social interaction and building relationships at work, our job is to really help be that advocate in between and helping them build those relationships and friendships. And it's really introducing that individual to their coworkers and helping them with short stories and different topics to really have those conversations, doing some of that prep work beforehand about appropriate conversations at work, and prepping some of those conversations so that they can start to engage in those. A lot of it, like I said, really just starts with that introduction, of going over and helping that introduction so that they can start building that relationship over time. And that's a lot of times, that's usually all that it takes. Sometimes we do get involved, and we'll encourage that employee on the side and say, okay, working with this individual, if you can, just check in on them from time to time to see how they're doing, and really kind of push and help foster some of that relationship, so that we want it to build naturally. We don't want to push it on anyone, because that's usually not successful. I hope that helps. It's like I said, it's not the easiest part, but it's usually something that develops over time, and it's not something that's going to be immediate, probably no different than any of our personal lives. And we've answered a lot of questions. I'm always guilty of it when I get off a training, or I always think of something afterwards. So feel free to email me, or call me anytime. I'm happy to help. I love talking through different scenarios of current jobs or looking for a new job. What's the next steps? And if I don't have the answer immediately, we'll find that answer. I've got an amazing team that I get to work with that have been doing this for years, and they're so good at what they do. So we will help you get the information you need one way or the other. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.